Federal Housing Finance Agency Director Bill Pulte, ready and waiting, joining us now this morning. Mr. Pulte, it's good to have you on. Thanks.
Good to see you, Joe.
So, Bill, you had a news conference scheduled for later this morning. It's postponed, but I don't know whether that matters. From what we already know, there's just a lot going on, a lot of questions, a lot of differing viewpoints. And as you know, everything nowadays is very political. And I've noted, you have noted and tweeted about the great lengths that we've seen some former Fed officials and Fed watchers have gone to minimize what we're talking about. Things like, well, mortgage applications are hard. They're complex. It's a clerical error, et cetera, et cetera. Nonetheless, though, Bill, a lot of discussion centers on the legal meaning of cause and whether it can be used to justify the firing. Here's an op-ed piece. I don't know if you saw it this morning, from a couple of Republicans, from Phil Gramm and Hensarling. And just tell me respond to this. This is what they said. There has yet to be a formal investigation. He hasn't been formally charged, much less convicted of anything. And her for-cause firing appears to be another assault on the monetary policy independence. So even Republicans it's raising an eyebrow. How do you respond to that?
Well, first, let me say this, and I'll get into your question in a second. I've never seen people support crime like this. This is insane. Alleged crime, let's call it that. What she did was wrong. The fact that she hasn't come out and said, hey, these aren't my documents, or some rational explanation for this alleged crime, why is she not doing it? It doesn't make any sense. So I think most Americans, and you see this, Joe, on Twitter and otherwise, unless you're really well connected with the Fed or part of the elite class or, frankly, a news reporter, you look at this and you say, what the hell is going on at the Fed? To get to your point around independence, I don't believe for the last 4 years that the Fed has been independent. You see that even right now. You got Lisa Cook, who's being represented by Norm Eisen. Norm Eisen is like the guy who tried to take down Trump, failed at it, but led the first impeachment. He's the lawyer for Lisa Cook. This is a raging Democrat. Then on top of it, you've got Jerome Powell, who's sitting silent. Okay,
right. Bill, I think what they're saying, it seems unusual. You're not. I don't think your primary role at what you're doing now is to seek out and find mortgage fraud.
That's completely false. That's completely false, Joe. That's completely false. My job, and I swore an oath before the Senate and otherwise, that I would root out mortgage fraud and that I would ensure that there's safety and soundness in the mortgage market.
The idea is that it might be one-sided.
Joe, I got to finish.
Okay. All right,
I got to finish. In 2008, the Housing and Economic Recovery Act was passed and gave enormous authority to this position in which I sit. It didn't happen by accident. There was a housing crash. A big part of the reason that there was a housing crash was because people were buying mortgages and engaging in mortgage fraud. So I'm not going to be intimidated from pursuing mortgage fraud just because somebody has the special title of being a Fed governor. This is my job, to ensure the safety and soundness of the mortgage market. It doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or Democrat or a Fed governor or somebody who mans a convenience store. If you commit mortgage fraud, you need to be held accountable, period.
Bill, speak to this. And I think that there's two ideas that could be held at one time. One is, it is very possible that she did something wrong, if not illegal. It is also possible that people will view this as a political weaponization. Can you speak directly to how this came about in terms of going and looking at her work and looking at these mortgages? Who told you to do that? What kind of conversations you've had about that so people can understand the dynamic taking place here?
Our agency discovered it, Andrew, independent of anyone else. That's what we do day in and day out. As I said, we received a tip. We only use public documents in our referrals. We only use public documents in order to determine the fraud. And frankly, people need to stop being so lazy and say, you know what, maybe we should do some hard work and figure out how we root out mortgage fraud, because we can't have another 2008 again.
But just to put a fine point on it, this tip came from where?
Well, you have to understand, of course, as part of a federal investigation, I'm not going to explain our sources and methods, where we get tips from, who are whistleblowers. This is exactly why you have whistleblower protections. This is exactly why you don't intimidate people who are your sources, who give you information. So it would be reckless for me to do that.
No, but this goes to the political weaponization issue, because if, for example, the tip came from inside the administration or came from even inside your agency with somebody who works for you who decided, you know what, I looked through this and I need you to look into this. then that creates the perception issue. So again, you can have, I think you can hold both ideas in your head, but I'm trying to actually, to some degree, help you explain to the public that one component part of the political weaponization issue.
Well, I don't need you to help me explain things, Andrew. It's very clear. This lady signed these documents or she didn't. She committed mortgage fraud or she didn't. And why are we making excuses for somebody who's supposed to be, I think, the most sophisticated person, one of the most sophisticated people in the entire world? And somehow you and Steve Leisman and all these people aren't asking Powell, why are you allowing this at this prestigious institution?
Bill, I've asked that question repeatedly. I've asked why has she not come out more publicly and vociferously defended herself if, in fact, there is a meritorious defense?
All right, go ahead.
Just real quickly, Bill. I hear you. I'm not a fan of mortgage fraud, if that's what happened here. I guess the only question that I would separate from that is she hasn't had her day in court yet. She is allegedly has done these things. It feels like she's being put in the court of public opinion. Should we let this play out in the court and have her have to defend it and either be found guilty or not guilty? Or should this already rise to the level of cause before she has a chance to defend herself against it?
Well, I would defer to the lawyers on that. All I can tell you is my job is to ensure the safety and soundness of the mortgage market. I feel very strongly that I'm doing my job. We're going to be making referrals. We make referrals almost every day. Lisa Cook happened to be one of them. Everybody happens to be interested in it. I would also say, too, that, yes, she will go through the court process. She did sue the president, and that's working its way through the court process. And to the extent that she is charged, which I do believe she will be indicted, that's my opinion, I believe she will be indicted, she will have her day in court, just like any other American.
Bill, when you postponed the news conference today, you said respect for the process. Does it have to do with establishing cause? And the reason I ask is, I mean, the president's already acted, and to actually, under the Act, the Federal Reserve Act, to constitute legal grounds for termination, you need to have already proven cause, and this has not been adjudicated. That's why I just wonder whether the cart was put before. Is it the cart before? I always get that mixed up.
No, I do believe there's very strong cause, and I defer to the president's lawyers and the DOJ on that. So I think most people, unless you live in a bubble, frankly, would look at it and say, you can't be doing this kind of stuff. The average American, I mean, you see it in your Twitter replies. People are stunned that this is even an issue, frankly.
But is that why you postponed the news conference, to let things play out, or
I don't want to say why I necessarily did, but I would just say to you that, look, the DOJ has said that they are investigating this. I have great respect for Pam Bondi. I'm very appreciative of Pam and what she's doing with mortgage fraud and making this a priority. So the totality of things, I'm just going to let the process play itself out.
But, Bill, in the same way that I think you believe that she should publicly declare herself one way or the other about what took place, I think the public is asking the question, how did this come about? It goes to this tip question. And I'm curious why you don't want to take off the table, for example, just the idea of where the tip came from, and without disclosing who it is, but to be able to say it didn't come from somebody inside the administration, it didn't come from somebody inside of your own department, for example. It came from a completely, third party, if that's the case. Can you speak to that?
Again, I think we're worried about the wrong thing. There's an alleged crime here. Why aren't we talking about the crime? Why are we blaming the investigators? I mean, if I get alerted to an alleged crime, Andrew, I have a responsibility to report it. Lisa Cook is no different. It's the same thing with, all types of people, and, without getting into specific individuals, who don't have lawyers like Norm Eisen or going out and trying to make this political. There are a lot of other people that have been criminally referred, and they don't have this type of benefit being given to them, which is, maybe it's a clerical error and maybe it's this. Did you sign these documents or did you not? Do we hold people at the Federal Reserve to a high standard or not? Public officials shouldn't be exempt from scrutiny.
Speaking of that, Ken Paxton, Texas Attorney General, running for U.S. Senator, U.S. Senate, there's at least, it looks like, 3 examples, working examples right now of what could be described as alleged mortgage fraud. Is that something you're looking at?
As I said, unless it's something that's either been made public by lawyers like Norm Eisen or in criminal referrals, I'm not going to comment on any specific situation. If things are made public, then or if we decide to make them public, then I will talk about it. But I'm not going to engage in any specific individuals.
If you made this public?
That's false. First of all, that's another example of Abby Lowell and Norm Eisen politicizing this whole thing. They said that the president tweeted about my tweet. It's nonsense. There was a Bloomberg article about the referral that was out there. Okay, so this is all politicization. I am a private sector guy. I came into a government role. I promised to uphold the mortgage market. It's very personal to me. I saw Pulte Homes almost go into bankruptcy in 2008. And that's what I view my job as doing every day. And to your other point, it doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat. We will look at everything. And we are looking at Republicans, Democrats, you name it. If you commit mortgage fraud in this country, and with the resources that we have, we're trying to do as good of a job as we can.
That we will be waiting for this. I guess, Bill, and given what we saw in the prior administration, and I'm not saying two wrongs make a right, but certainly we saw the president talk about the overrun in costs for the new Fed building. We know what his comments are about Jay Powell. So we've had all these precedents for things, going after the Fed, trying, because the president wants lower interest rates, obviously. And it just when this came about afterwards, you can see how people would connect the dots to make it look like, the Fed or Lisa Cook is just being targeted as part of the continuing.
No, being targeted is going after the president and changing the statute of limitations and doing what they did in New York.
Oh, no, I agree.
This is within the statute of limit. Hold on. This is within this. You guys, you keep talking over me. Just give me 1 second.
Okay.
The situation here is within the statute of limitations. I am an independent regulator responsible for mortgages. I believe there was mortgage fraud. I have a duty to report it. I mean, Andrew and Joe, would you want me as the mortgage regulator to see mortgage fraud from one of the most sophisticated economists in the entire world who's responsible for managing banks and monetary policy and not report that?
Right. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't report it. I just think there's a question mark in the public about how all this came about, as well as the merits itself, obviously, of why she hasn't defended herself. And it's a question we continue to ask. I have a slightly different question, which is about Jay Powell.
Jay Powell hasn't come out his own. It's bizarre.
Well, that's where I was going to go next, which is, what is your view of Jay Powell in this situation? He obviously didn't fire her on his own. He is, interestingly, Lisa Cook has now sued not just the president, but interestingly, Jay Powell personally and the Fed board.
I don't know, but I'll tell you, I think by the day he's creating cause. Whether the president does something about that or not, I don't know. But
cause, you believe that the president should fire him for cause for?
I would just say to you that it is very abnormal that you have this type of conduct of a sitting governor. They still have her on the website. As far as I'm concerned, she still thinks that she's employed. There is a sitting order from the president of the United States who has the authority to do this. And I don't know why Jay Powell would do it. I thought he was I've always thought he's a smart guy.
Well,
it doesn't make sense to me.
But he's being sued and is probably waiting to see how the courts decide on this, too.
We all know what's going on. I mean, we all know what's going on with Jay Powell.
What is going on with Jay Powell? Just so because I don't think
Jay Powell doesn't like our president. He went and he lowered rates. We're getting into policy stuff now, and I like to keep the legality different from policy. But look, to say this isn't politicized and that this isn't an independent Fed, look at what he did the last many years with Biden right before the election. And now you have low inflation and he's not cutting rates. And then he gets a lady who's alleged of credible mortgage fraud.
The job by,
and he doesn't even say, hold on, and he doesn't even say, this is not, if this is conduct is there. He doesn't even announce an investigation. It's odd. It's very odd.
All right, we're going to leave it there and hope you come back because it's fascinating that we have great discussion, Bill.
You too. Great to see all of you.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll hope to see you again soon.
You got it.
When's the news conference going to be, Bill? Do you know? Is it rescheduled or just postponed?
We'll see. I have great respect for the process.
Stay tuned. Okay.